In this lesson, we will be looking at Mendelian genetics. We're going to be starting by looking at the basic Mendelian genetics by looking at Greg Mendel, who is really considered the father of genetics. And what he did is studied the patterns of inheritance in pea plants. So let's start by looking at very basic vocabularies. I'm going to start with the term gene, which basically means DNA that contains genetic information for a specific trait. There are different forms of the same gene, and we call them alleles. For example, the gene for eye color will have multiple alleles. Could be an allele for brown eyes, or an allele for blue eyes. Those are all alternate forms of the same gene. In this case, eye color. We talk about dominant allele if that allele is always expressed when it's present. For example, the gene for tallness in pea plants will always be expressed, and we use the uppercase T to represent the dominant allele. A recessive allele, on the other hand, is the one which is hidden if the dominant allele is present. For example, in pea plants, shortness is considered a recessive gene and can only express if the allele for tallness is absent. We talk about genotype when we are referring to the genetic makeup of an organism. And a genotype will always have two alleles present. We talk about homozygous and dominant if we are talking about dominant genes present. So for example, the tall gene is present, allele is present, both of them, that is an homozygous dominant. Heterozygous is when we have the dominant and a recessive allele present. And of homozygous recessive is when we only have the two recessive alleles present. Phenotype refers to the appearance of an organism. In other words, it's physical trait, what you can observe. So for example, tall peas or short peas. We can talk about the seed shape, which can be round or wrinkled. We can talk about the seed color, which can be yellow or green. We can talk about the pod shape, which could be inflated or constricted. Or we can talk about the flower position, which can be axial, or it can be also detached. Heredity and generations. So in tracing a hereditary trait through several generations, the following terms are used. We talk about parental generation, which is presented by the letter P to refer to parents. We talk about first video generation. In this case, we are referring to children or offsprings. And we talk about F2 generation or second video generation, which refers to the grandchildren.